Thank you, Padma, for your rather generous introduction. Don't deserve that, it's all available. But I am still the same A.B. Pandit research scientist. But what I thought of discussing with you is the success story of ICT. And the success story cannot be controlled by a single person. It is always a teamwork. And similarly, in this presentation, as you can see from my first slide itself, that I'm acknowledging the contribution while preparing this presentation itself of my colleagues, Professor Bhagwat, Professor Padma Devarajan, Professor Gaikar, who have been instrumental in bringing about this governance change or the governance specificity, as you would like to call it. So this presentation is in 4 categories or in 4 intervals. The first, I will give you general impressions as well as general information with some statistics about Institute of Chemical Technology, some history, and how we went about developing what ICT is today, followed by the academic governance, which is essentially decided, controlled by Professor S.S. Bhagwat, who's currently a Dean Academic Program, followed by defining the role of alumni and innovation in bringing this dynamic ICT as a thriving institute, always involved in research, innovation, and translational research. And the last concluding is the one which is governed by where we will try to find out the specific differences why ICT is different and is unique in a way it is. So let me start. If you feel that you want any clarifications required on any of the display screens which I'm going to present, please stop me in the middle. Doesn't matter. There is no problem as far as the flow of talk is concerned. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So the title is Governance in Higher Educational Institutes. And when we talk about governance, the prime importance of any higher educational institute in terms of governance is academic governance. I'm not going to talk about financial details, what budgets are available, how we are going to utilize those, what struggle which we have to pay, but I'll keep on mentioning it from time to time as and when required. So ICT, which is a deemed to be university under Section 3 of UGC Act 1956, is essentially a Maharashtra state-owned university. It comes under the Maharashtra state government. We are answerable to the state of Maharashtra. It has received a NAC A++ rating with CGPA of 3.77, NIRF ranking of 2020 in pharmacy. We are 4th in the country. In engineering, we are 18th in the country. In terms of technical university, again, we are 18th. And overall, as far as universities, all the universities are concerned, we are 34th. And this is mainly because we are quite a small university. In addition to that, we also have been recognized by QS World Ranking as 152nd in Asia, 22nd in India. And in terms of Times Higher Education ranking, it has ranked as 7th in India and 92nd in Asia. And a recent concluded Atal ranking of innovation, ICT has ranked 1st in the country. We, in addition to the main Mumbai campus, ICT also has 2 more campuses, one at Marathwada, Jalna, and I'll talk about the difference, what are the courses which are taught in both Marathwada, Jalna, as well as IOC, ICT IOC, Bhubaneswar campus. So let me proceed with the presentation. So broadly speaking, the path is indicated and the history is indicated through this slide. It was founded in 1933 and as a department of University of Bombay, and that's why it used to be called as BUD City, Bombay University Department of Chemical Technology. Subsequently, in 2002, it received an institute status. The different sections within the department became departments, and this conglomeration of departments was converted into an institute. In 2004, we received an autonomous institute status, and in 2008, we got deemed to be university status. Now, each of these levels of autonomy or freedom, how it has impacted the governance or how it has impacted the productivity, I'll show is in quantitative terms. It was recognized at Category 1 Institute by MHRD UGC in 2018. And in the same year, we also started 2 campuses. On March 18, IOC Bhubaneswar campus. IOC stands for Indian Oil Corporation. It was an initiative of corporate social responsibility funding by Indian Oil Corporation in starting this particular campus at Bhubaneswar. Marathwada campus was initiated with the Maharashtra state government directive and through the development of Marathwada region, and it started its operation on May 4th, 2018. So these are the 2 campuses with a total outlay of about 500 crores over a period of 5 years at ICT IOC campus, and 297 crores from the Maharashtra state government and 100 crores through philanthropy, donations, and CSR activity as we have committed to ICT Jalna campus. So the programs which are currently being run at these 3 campuses, Mumbai campus runs 9 undergraduate programs, 18 postgraduate programs, 29 PhD programs, 1 postgraduate diploma in technology management, chemical technology management, and 1 certificate course in chemical safety. At Bhubaneswar and Jalna, however, we run an integrated MTech program, 5-year integrated MTech program consisting of 3 trimesters every year and 5 years, 3 trimesters every year. 15 trimesters make the complete master's degree program. It gives a major degree in chemical engineering and a minor degree in various branches of chemical technology, be it polymers, plastics and polymers, energy, petrochemicals, pharma, food and fermentation, and so on and so forth, textiles. In both these places, the coursework is different, that after every semester, every trimester spent in college, the student go to an industry or a research institute or a different academic institute for a period of 3 to 3.5 months to do an internship. So by the time the student has graduated with a postgraduate degree of MTech, student would have spent at least 1.5 years either in an industry or in a different academic institute or in a research laboratory, all combined, put together. This will allow the student to decide what he or she wants to do in life later on after they get their postgraduate degree of master's in chemical engineering and a minor in the specific branch of technology. These are some of our alumni who have been recognized through Padma awardees. The only reason I am depicting this is the kind of quality which has been in existence right from its inception. ICT was started with an intention of the industries of Mumbai, mostly textile industries, and these industries started and initiated, they wanted a good, competent workforce to run these textile mills and the allied chemicals which are used in the textile processing. So when the initiative came from the industry itself, it was a first case where industry wanted an institute, as a result of which there have been organic links between the institute and industry all along, and over the years these links have in fact strengthened considerably. These are some of our current alumni, and you will see who's who. Shri Mukesh Ambani has been our alumni. Shri Ashwin Bhai Dani, who is a vice chairman of Asian Paints. late Dr. Anji Reddy of Dr. Reddy's Lab, Shri Mr. Nikhil Meshwani of Reliance Industries, Shri Madhukar Bhai Parekh of Pidilite, Fevicol fame, and Shri Narottam Sakseria of Ambuja Cement. Now, if you see the total contribution of these alumni are making, according to Shri Dr. Amitabh Kant, the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, he estimated that ICT alone is contributing to the tune of 8% of India's GDP. You look at the turnover of all these 6 companies itself, and you will find that number itself is significant. Why this has been responsible is what we will try to understand from today's presentation. As you can see, this is probably, in my opinion, a key slide. The progress and the sustenance of any institute is dependent on these 4 pillars: faculty, student, support staff, and alumni. And let me elaborate the role of each of these pillars. They are the ones who are supporting the entire ICT in terms of its governance, in terms of its running, in terms of its progress, and also in terms of its competence. So the faculty, the major challenge has always been how to attract and retain a faculty, the personal standing and commitment of the faculty, their connectivity with an industry, and I'll tell you why this is so important. We will find in due course of time the kind of incentives which are available to ICT faculty when he or she joins ICT. He or she is in a position to connect with industries, to do consultancy with the industry, and supplement his or her income significantly, in some cases more than whatever salary which they get from the state government itself. Now, this is only possible if they get a support from competent and committed students. So the next job, because we are useless without students, as a result of which it is extremely important for us to attract and give students their due in terms of their contribution in this overall development of science and technology education. So we attract students, or we admit students through the examination, which is Maharashtra State Common Entrance Test, Engineering Test examination. And also we admit about 30% of the students on a JEE advanced basis based on their ranking. And these seats are filled on all India basis. Similarly, as far as ICT Bhubaneswar and ICT Jalna is concerned, it's a similar story. ICT Bhubaneswar is totally on the basis of JEE advanced, and ICT Jalna again 30% of the seats on the basis of Maharashtra State Government Common Entrance Test, and the balance, 70%, and the balance 30% again on joint entrance examination. So the students which we get, we are very fortunate, are extremely good, and they are top of their qualifying examinations as well as. So just to give you an example, out of 200, if you consider a GATE examination, our chemical engineering closes at about 88 percentile, and chemical technology closes at about 70-72 percentile, because of course the number of seats are significantly more in chemical technology as compared to chemical engineering. We also run a pharmacy course, which is a B.Pharm in addition to B.Tech Pharma course, where the admissions are governed independently either by PCI or through AICTE. To run an institute of this size, to provide the infrastructure, to make the necessary facilities available, and to keep them running, a competent and committed support staff is absolutely essential. And this is where we are extremely fortunate and lucky. We get a very good support staff, and we spend significant amount of time and effort, and we give them opportunity to improve their skill set. And TechWeep have been extremely useful for such. They improve their skill set, they add on to their skill sets, and many of the activities which we perform in ICT are not sourced out, but they are in fact created within ICT itself. And the fourth pillar, which is what is going to carry the name of the institute forward, is the alumni. You have already seen the achievements of the alumni in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of contribution to the government initiatives and policy. So there is a global spread, and these global spread of alumni is considers ICT as one of their main mothers who have given them where they are, as a result of which they try to return their uh, their due to the mother institute. So alumni supports not only the institute generally, but it also takes care of the students requiring certain financial support. It also supports number of support staff in terms of their school education fees, their children's school education fees, as well as medical facilities, insurance facilities. Many of these initiatives are available through our alumni network. We have strong 7,500 alumni, and they are extremely well recognized and well committed to the welfare of the institute. Alumni also has multiple chapters. I have 2 chapters in USA, 1 chapter in Singapore, 1 chapter in UK, another chapter in Sri Lanka and Singapore. So these alumni, and wherever ICT alumni are spread, even in China, we have a chapter. So these alumni bring the best from those respective regions and contribute to the welfare as well as progress of ICT. So the objective is to creation of world-class facilities for innovation and bringing dedicated leaders together has been the motto of ICT, and these 4 pillars support this motto fully. Just to summarize the success mantra, you require dedicated and accomplished faculty, freedom to appoint, there is no interference, they are appointed only on the basis of their competence. Talented students coming from all strata without any donation, only on the basis of merit. And we take extreme pride in stating that once a student enters ICT, and we haven't seen a single case where the student had to leave ICT because of the want of finances required, either to pay his tuition fees or to stay in the hostel or to pay his mess bill. Our alumni are always there to support them. They have the spirit of entrepreneurship, and I'll talk about this in a bit more detail, where alumni, faculty, and the students combine together to do and carry out translational research, where the research which they carry out or the work which they carry out in the institute is converted into processes or products which are of social benefit in addition to the benefit of the country. ICT can boast of having more than 500 first generation entrepreneurs in India, as well as having multiple locations throughout the world. So the spirit of innovation among the faculty and student and alumni is evident, and alumni really drives this innovation, as we will see in due course of time. So this is the best example of Trinity: academia, industry, and government relationship. So these 3 institutes, which are, that is these 3, let's say, institutes which are responsible for working together for the sustenance and growth and progress of ICT. These 3 entities, that is institute, the industry which is supporting us, and the government which is giving us, the Maharashtra state governments, as well as the various agencies of central government such as University Grants Commission, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Atomic Energy, Department of Biotechnology, support us in full way. We also have a lot of industrial consultancy by faculty, which I have already mentioned, and they support their income in addition to their regular salaries. Unfortunately or fortunately, we have had an opportunity only on the chemical sector. Of course, we have broadened the vision of chemical sector or the scope of chemical sector. Chemical sectors have entered also in biotechnology. It has entered into energy. It has entered into materials. because the principles of chemical engineering are across, and these principles can be applied for many of these sciences, and they have been applied. And ICT, starting with only 2 departments of chemical engineering and textile, has now 7 departments, in fact 9 departments, coupled with supporting departments of chemistry, physics, and mathematics. I must say that we have been extremely fortunate to get extremely competent and tall leaders having a great vision for institute, and they were given freedom to use that vision and to implement that vision with no restriction put on them. And this is probably the one of the most important criteria, is how the autonomy has helped ICT to grow. So assisting students on merit cum means basis, faculty members, as in every faculty has developed his or her certain set of expertise, and they are considered as the experts in that particular domain, and they seek consultancy or expert advices from all over the world, not limited to India alone. Whenever we take industrial consultancy, 1/3 share in terms of the monetary consultancy charges are shared with the institute. That is how we are able to get a significant quantity of income, which allows us to sustain. Otherwise, apart from the salary grant, we do not get any other money from the Maharashtra state government. Maharashtra state government gives the salary of teaching and non-teaching staff, but rest all the expenses of running the institutes are generated through extramural funding, consultancy share, overheads of various projects, and that is how we are able to sustain ourselves. So there is a general impression among others that ICT is a rich institute. Sorry, it is not a rich institute. We have to really struggle to sustain ourselves. But in spite of that, we do not give up with the spirit of innovation, which is what the motto of ICT is. So the culture of creativity and connectivity has been in existence right from the beginning. This again lists out some of the statistics which I told you about. It's number 1 and 4th globally in terms of publications. I'll show you some of these statistics in the form of graphics later on. We have been graduating over 140 PhD students every year for the past 3 years or so. We have got 360 UG scholarships. This is one of the institutes in the world where we have UG to PG ratio, which is less than 1. We have higher number of postgraduates, masters and PhDs put together than undergraduates. One of the latest recognitions, which was declared couple of months ago, is 11 of the ICT faculty were recognized among the top 2% of the global researchers by Stanford University survey. This just shows that this has been happening over a period. It is not a flash in the pan. We got one of the highest citations per faculty, and annual citations from ICT faculty put together exceed 10,000. Right, we have 4 fellows of Indian National Science Academy, NASI, Indian Academy of Sciences, Indian National Academy of Engineering, 4 fellows of the World Academy of Sciences, and 4 Sir J.C. Bose fellows of Department of Science and Technology. We have got 23 endowment chairs, 49 endowment visiting fellowships, 468 papers. Last year's count was 568. We run on an average 80 to 100 projects simultaneously. Let's say 50% of the projects are from industry, 50% of the projects are from government. But in terms of value, about 60 to 70% money still comes from the government sponsored projects, and about 30 to 40% of the money comes from industry. We also have 2 fellows of Royal Society London, and because of a charity institute, we have 100% tax exemption, whoever wishes to donate to ICT. Now, these are just some of the MOUs which we have signed with either the academic institute or with industries or with international universities throughout the globe. So we have from China, we have from Australia, we have from USA, we also have from Korea. Some of the new initiatives which have been responsible for the governance, that we have a cloud-based MIS system, the attendance is completely biometric, and if a student doesn't attend the class for 3 consecutive lectures, an email goes to his parents stating that your ward is not attending the classes. So this is done regularly. There are video conferencing facilities, there are lecture recording facilities. So many of these lectures which are given, students can go back, refer to these particular lectures and learn again at their own pace rather than following it up. We also have about 750 megawatt of solar installations mounted on the top of the terrace of ICT. ICT's daily consumption is about 2 megawatt hours, out of which about 1/3 of it we are able to generate it using solar rooftop systems. We also have large gardens, an area of about 17 acres, which is fully green. We also have our own effluent treatment as well as food management systems available, RFID based identity card, as well as majority of the books also have RFID tag, so they can be tracked and they can be issued. A completely automated book issuing system is also existence in library. We also have medical facility not directly present, but because of the vicinity of municipal hospitals, we have a MOU. Every doctor visits the hostel for 1 hour from Monday to Saturday. There are student counseling centers with 2 psychiatrists who can have and counsel the students. We have a daycare centers. I'll show you some photographs as well. And we also have sports and recreational facilities. And India's first university based AstroTurf has been in ICT with a kind donation from Pidilite Industries Limited. We also keep in mind that whatever which we do, this work is of social relevance and of social utility. So water treatment technology for lakes and ponds, Rankala. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we commissioned a similar cleaning facility at Bindusagar Lake in Bhubaneswar, which was inaugurated by Honorable Naveen Patnaik in the presence of Honorable Shri Dharmendra Pradhan. We have developed mosquito repellent textiles, affordable drug delivery systems. Professor Padma Devarajan deals in that. We have also had waste to asset technology, waste plastics, using waste plastic at extremely low temperature to convert it into liquid fuel called polyurja. Many of the industrial waste and biomass have been valorized to recover valuable chemicals or other materials from it. We have also worked on development of solar cooker, eco cooker, improvement in cooking methodologies, because cooking is essentially a chemical engineering or a chemical technology based activity. So understanding food cooking practices along with the food technology department, which is part of ICT, we have developed multiple cooking facilities, not the recipes, but the basic science behind the working of those recipes have been worked out. Health foods and nutraceutical formulations have also been developed. And as I said, there should be 360 merit cum mean scholarship. And faculty as advisor to several government organizations and industrial organizations. In fact, I am on the committee of Ministry of Environment and Forestry and Climate Change, where we grant licenses or we grant permissions to start industries looking at their overall environmental impact. So the best practice, according to me, the first driver is the autonomy, which is the key driver. And I'll show you quantitatively how this has been achieved. You can either have academic and financial autonomy, or you can only have academic autonomy or only financial autonomy. As a result of autonomy, the time spent between innovative idea generation and implementation is significantly reduced. It helps in generation of human resource and the improvement in their skill set. All the stakeholders participate actively because they know that their contribution is going to be recognized, and that recognition will come in the form of either cash awards or in the form of promotion in their respective services. So this is pictorially depicting how every stage of autonomy has helped ICT in improving its productivity. Now look at it from 1964 to 1984, when we were part of Mumbai University, our input, and this is essentially number of international publications coming out over a 5-year period, they have remained more or less static in the range of about 150 or so. When we receives functional autonomy, that is, we could independently take research projects, we could directly take donations, and we could purchase our own equipments. Otherwise, every time we had to go to the University of Mumbai for permission. So this resulted into, you can see a growth in this graph, right? When we received this particular autonomy, that the autonomy related to the academic autonomy. So in 1990, one of our faculty received fellowship of Royal Society. In 1994, we got autonomous status within the university, design and operation exclusive courses. So we were not part of the course which were run by other university engineering colleges. We had our own course. In 1996, AICTE considered UICT, which was an institute at that point of time, as a benchmark institute. And they granted further autonomy. So you can see the slope has suddenly jumped. In 1998, we started a 3-year post-BSc. We converted the 3 years post-BSc course into 4-year BTech course that also contributed. You can see how the slope has increased further. In 2002, Platinum Jubilee year, in which UICTE requests UGC to confer a university status, which was finally given in 2008. But in 2004, we got a complete autonomy, that is financial as well as academic autonomy. And that has resulted into further increase in the slope. As you can see from this particular graph, at every stage when the autonomy has given, and this autonomy has resulted into increase in the productivity. PG to UG ratio, now it is more than 1. Now this is slightly dated. It is 2006-07. As of today, it is more than 1. This is where we compare ourselves. We don't necessarily compare ourselves with the institutes from India. If we want to get recognition outside, we need to compare with the recognized institutions all over the world. So MIT, Minnesota, Stanford, Caltech, Wisconsin, Berkeley, Michigan. This shows how many faculties are there, what is the expenditure which is occurring, what quantum of money which the institute is spending on the faculty, that is money spent per faculty, what are the number of graduates and postgraduates which are there, and how many publications are occurring. So you will see from here that per faculty per year, we are top as compared to any other institutes in the world. And in terms of the value for money, if you consider it, we are actually probably the best. See, papers per $1,000 spent per year per faculty, and we are extremely productive, as you can see from here. Now, this is not limited to when you compare with the global institute. We also can look at it, from within India, ICT, IIT Kanpur, Mumbai, Madras, and you will see we have maintained our rank since 1964 when it started counting. I'm not putting anybody down here. I'm just telling you that the gene which is there in ICT has been responsible for every stakeholder of ICT to really thrive. This just gives some statistics in terms of number of publications which are occurring, number of patents, the PhD graduated, the income which we get through R&D funding, the consultancy income which we get every year, right? And 1/3 of this income goes to ICT as share. Now, these are the 2 new initiatives which we have started. This is under construction building, which is called as ICT DAE Center for Chemical Engineering Education and Research, with a total outlay of about 215 crores. And this is a plan of Marathwada Jalna campus, where we have a center, Marathwada Center in Maharashtra. I have similar photographs of Bhubaneswar. Unfortunately, they are not here. So what are the opportunities available to us and what challenges which we have to face? The opportunities are freedom to create new courses, and I'll come to that in the second phase. We also have a dynamic syllabus in line with the national need, and this is where the national education policy, the new national education policy, can be addressed and has been already addressed in ICT's revision of syllabi. We attract the best talent, offer flexibility of operation, that is transfer of credits from one department to another department, transfer of credits, transfer of courses. All these are available to ICT students. But to be able to implement all that, there are significant resource crunches. So we need to generate resources to implement, and this is where I think the corporate social responsibility and involvement of alumni comes into picture. We need to create an atmosphere where all the stakeholders feeling a part of the team and a common cause for the growth and welfare or well-being of ICT. Freedom to allocate resources as well as where needed. See, unlike IITs, when IIT get a block grant, the Board of Governors has a freedom to distribute that block grant depending upon the need of the institute. Unfortunately, we do not get any block grant. We get only salaries. So whatever extramural funding which we generate, that is the only block grant which we have, and we spend it as per the need in consultation with the Board of Governors. So let me move on to second stage, which is the governance, which we call in terms of teaching and learning processes. Now we are there for the students. So we cannot be just shouting from the top of the roof saying that we are great, we are doing this, we are doing that. It needs to be judged in terms of the responses from the students and how can we assess the kind of feedback which we receive from the student is equally important. Sometimes the students do not have the level of maturity at an early stage, but by the time they graduate, they have formed their opinions, so they do suggest certain changes. So the contents of this part of the presentation includes what is the need for curriculum revision, and I need not elaborate the importance of this particular aspect in the light of national new education policy, which has been just announced. What is the process which is followed for the revision? Which are the highlights in the revised curricula? How do we audit the examination to assess whether whatever we are teaching has been assimilated by the students or not? And what is the outcome-based education? And this is where TechWhip, NAC, and NBA has been extremely useful in coordinating and collating and bringing focus in a quantitative manner. And I'll show you some of these in numbers. Yet there are some unresolved issues. Hopefully, the new education policy or national education policy is likely to address these issues. And at least in theory, it is supposed to address it. In terms of implementation, we'll have to see. So focus is on fundamental understanding. It is not just passing of the examination, but what you really know, what you can really do is more important than getting just good marks. So recent trends, you have to keep in line with the needs of the industry. We have to keep the changing mindset because the information is readily available on net. The teacher doesn't need to just give the same information which is available on their phone, on the internet, but teacher has to go beyond that. So we are having Bachelor of Chemical Engineering. This is just one example. Every course follows the same procedure. Years may vary here and there. So 1984, we are part of University of Mumbai. In 1999, we have autonomous status in terms of academics. In 2009, deemed university. 2015-20, we are already modifying in line with the national education policy. So the drivers of the revision process include, of course, the qualifying examination. The competence IIEEE or JEE will keep on giving opportunity to students to improve their skill set. In turns, the intake will also have that specific effect on the student in terms of what is the competence they have when they enter the institute. Keep on changing the syllabus, the state and central board, CBSE changes, HSC changes. So by the time they come out, they have got a different skill set. 11th standard, 10th standard 15 years ago and 11th standard, 12th standard today have got a completely different understanding, completely different mindset, completely different skill set, and that needs to be integrated when they join these professional education institutes. We need to remove duplication, especially in chemistry, physics, maths at first year level. This is what we did. We need to adopt project-based learning. So the basic principles have been taught to them, but how these principles are used in engineering and technology should be the way to teach these particular courses in terms of utility. So we shifted some of the courses, brought them earlier so that they can start learning and understanding the utility of chemical engineering and chemical technology and can start practicing it right from work. So AICTE and NBT accreditation guidelines required syllabi to be benchmarked with respect to other institutes, and that's precisely what we do. We concentrate on the outcome-based education needed. So outcome educational objectives and program outcomes, course outcomes, mapping of course outcomes, program objectives, and program educational objectives. Now this mapping is extremely important either to revise a syllabi or to assess a student in terms of his or her competency. Where do the students go from here? 40 to 50% of the students go for higher studies, 40 to 50% for jobs, and about 5 to 10% for management and civil services. So this is how I pictorially depicted course outcome 2, course outcome 3. These are the graduate attributes. So the program outcomes are defined. So you start with the mission and vision and work downwards to devise and to design a syllabi. Now this again shows the same way how objective-based education essentially works. What are the interactions which are taking place? So once you decide that this is the outcome which you want, what are the program educational objectives? What are the skill set which students require? What are the different methods which they need to adopt to learn different subjects? Because nothing can be, all the subjects cannot be taught in the same style. And there are techniques which you need to do, which you need to adopt. And I'm sure all engineering faculty who was involved will understand what do I mean, to what extent practicals are capable of teaching the principles as against theory. The same experiment, the same subject, the same principle, but when it is shown and practiced, it is much better understood as compared to just learning a theory. So the syllabi revision process passes through a curriculum of review of the curriculum of the leading universities. Rough draft is prepared by the academic committee. It is sent to all the staff stakeholders. Then they give comments. These comments are compiled. A revised draft is prepared. It is again sent to stakeholders. 2-3 iterations occur in this particular period. Once they are finally approved, it goes to PGPC, and then finally it is approved by the academic council and it is implemented. The fact is, you can have a beautifully crafted syllabus, but the problem comes in terms of its implementation. So we use for international benchmarking because it's basically chemical sciences. So these 6 universities are known to have extremely good chemical sciences, material sciences, catalysis sciences related program. So we use their syllabi as for benchmarking purposes. And these are typically distribution of the subjects: physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, communication skill, humanities, general engineering, core chemical engineering. So you'll find that the ratios of physics, chemistry, biology, prior to 2009, it was 23%, reduced to 20%, 22%, now it is 19%. Maths 10%, 11%, 6%, because by that time the maths, they have been taught, so they learn significant amount of mathematics. The applied mathematics part is the one which they need to be taught, and that's why the mathematical component can go down. So chemical engineering has been significantly increased, mainly because chemical engineering has encompassed many other branches of engineering, and that is why they also have become part of chemical engineering, needed to be improved. One of the significant increases which you find in humanities from 7% earlier to 10%, because whatever the professional engineers do, unless they have a social awareness of the activities which they are going to perform, it's going to be extremely difficult for them. So the stakeholders are alumni, external examiners of PhD thesis, as well as undergraduate thesis, visiting faculty, subject experts, industry experts, graduated students, and they always, when they go back for higher studies, they give us a feedback saying that if we had learned this, it would have been better. So we take those comments also into account. Feedback, as I already mentioned it to you, in terms of analytical, mathematical abilities, student needs to be exposed to newer and emerging areas. Otherwise, when they go out, they will be lagging in terms of the industrial practices. So industry relevant applications such as chemical safety, scale up, engineering standards codes, and the latest softwares, be it MATLAB, Aspen, ANSYS Fluent, and many others which are available in ICT and regularly given as practicals, as a part of the practicals in the undergraduate teaching, or for that matter, postgraduate teaching course. Some of our masters also do practicals, advanced practicals, which are necessary for them. In terms of humanity, interpersonal skill set, teamwork, strengthening, so we can perform various activities, and the counselors which you have, the psychological counselors which you have, also conduct programs which are useful for the general student community. Last year has been really difficult because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In spite of that, the online has allowed us to continue to interact, and that has, in a way, standardized many of these interaction activities. So the major changes which have been made, I have already listed out there. Increase the humanity credits. The process simulation lab has been introduced. This has been extremely useful, especially because conducting physical practicals was difficult. So virtual labs and simulation labs have been extremely useful. And we were practicing it earlier itself, about 4 or 5 years ago, but the real utility of that came into being for the past 10 months, 11 months during the pandemic. Right, subjects added: analytical chemistry, physics, biochemical engineering, use of AutoCAD, modeling and simulation laboratory, engineering aspects, engineering aspects of vacuum system, refrigeration pumps. This used to be a forte of mechanical engineers, but we have also started addressing it in chemical engineering because thermodynamics and thermodynamic principles under this are equally well taught in chemical engineering. And of course, the optimization methods. So COPO mapping, COPEO mapping, feedback from graduating student, feedback from parents, right? So examination audit, I have already mentioned it to you. This is how the examination is audited. Look at the continuous improvement. Examination should be a learning oriented. Examination should evaluate how the student can apply the knowledge in the real life. HOD as a chairperson, this is a typical committee which forms and looked at the examination audit. I will also, these are the steps which we follow. Since this presentation is going to be available, you can have a look at these presentations. If you want any additional clarification, I'll be more than happy to answer it in due course of time because I am available, you are going to be there. So I don't need to finish everything in one go, but I'm just going to make you aware what is available and what can be learned. So these are the typical way examination audit is carried out by sending a questionnaire, and this questionnaire is then statistically analyzed to find out which are the factors which need to be looked into, which need to be revised, which needs to be improved, which can be essentially neglected or omitted, because it's ultimately 4 years, approximately 8 hours every day, 5 days a week, so 40 hours per week, and then you have 16 weeks in a semester, so approximately 640 hours. And you have to fit everything in these 640 hours. So you have to sacrifice something and consider something important. So here I would like to put this caution. Other points that syllabus does not address. This is the analysis which we did. Are the grades a measure of abilities? This is when the class rank, when we get the students, right? So admission rank and semester 1 rank, semester 2 rank, you see a considerable spread. But if you look at only the semester 1 rank, there is some correspondence which is there. You move on, then semester 1 rank, semester I rank, any specific rank, you will find that the students have a specific skill set. And if they are examined in that particular skill set, the spread is significantly reduced. So it is important for you to identify which students have got which type of skill set and what type of subjects they are likely to excel in, and as a result of which you need to give them training in those subjects. This is the same statistical analysis, the kind of variations which you get. Most of the time you have a distribution which is normal distribution, which clearly indicates that we are analyzing statistically significant number of students, and the conclusions which can be drawn from this can be generic in nature. But some conclusions are not necessarily addressed through only statistics. So this is what, and those who haven't read, I would request you to read Richard Felder's books on chemical engineering education. So what we teach and what students learn. This is fact number 1, which you need to be aware of. Fact 2, how much a student learn depends on their native ability, native intellect, what is their background and what is their learning style. We can only work with students' learning style. That's all. We don't have any other. So classroom, library, classroom, home, workplace, library, information technology tool and instructions. So physical learning environment, virtual learning environment, there's a huge gap between the two. So the role of a teacher has significantly changed. The teacher is now a learning facilitator. He is not an instructor. New instruction material designer. So he has to create a material which can be utilized for instruction. He needs to create, he is essentially information organizer. Whatever information is there, how that information can be channelized, which will make it easily digestible to the students. You have to develop a new evaluation and assessment methods, exploration of new avenues of knowledge applications. So flipped classroom, maths versus simulation software, textbook versus internet. Teachers will have to be trained in how to teach massively oriented courses, open courses, need-based learning. Teaching is taking a backseat in academics. Just look at the UGC ICT self-assessment form and weightages. At the same time, with this, you can also compare this with the new national education policy, and you will realize that exactly these are the issues which have been attempted to address in the national education policy. So characteristics of evaluation, usability, accuracy, reproducibility, these are some measures. So there are many statistical tools which are available. You can do this analysis and find out where you are, and only when you are reproducible, accurate, you can draw conclusions and modify your syllabi, as well as knowledge imparting method, which will be useful to the students. So curriculum is only a small battle. Bigger battle is administering the syllabus by the individual teacher. Expected knowledge levels are not defined. Student evaluation should ensure attainment of knowledge levels in each course outcome, not information level. Now, information when applied becomes knowledge. Otherwise, it is just an information. And quantification of course outcome is extremely complicated. We have to have some assessment methods. This is what Professor Padma Devarajan talked about, and I will go through this. It's the alumni support. I have elaborated it again and again, but what you will see here is essentially some of the examples where we have used the skill set as well as the love and competence of alumni to improve the competence as well as growth of ICT, right? We have used it to enhance the public perception ICT. We have used it for the upgradation of infrastructure. We have used it for institution of awards. We have used it to give loans to needy students, assistance in factory visit, job placement, mentoring student, supporting institute level events, organizing lectures and seminar, managing the alumni network, and support to non-teaching staff. This is where alumni continues to contribute to to make everybody in the institute happy. I had said it earlier and I keep on saying it. This is the term which was coined by Professor Bhagwat. Is my objective is essentially to increase the happiness quotient of the institute. If everyone working in the institute is happy, they will contribute themselves. So what is the aim? Modernization. What is the role of USA and how they can, alumni, and what is the role of UDCT Alumni Association, UAA, and how they can contribute to achieve that particular role or an objective. Summer internship, laboratory infrastructure, summer internship, certificate course in chemical technology management. Each of these initiatives have been driven by the alumni, right? Distinguished Alumnus Award in academics, professional, entrepreneur research. So every type of contribution to the society, to the industry, to the nation is recognized by the Alumni Association by giving these awards annually. These are some of the best practices where the innovation is promoted, right? I'll take about 10 minutes. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. So innovation, ICT has started an innovation council, and only on 26th of January, ICT has also started and opened and inaugurated Innovation and Incubation Center, again driven by our old alumni Shri S.M. Mokashi. Now this is where we'll start incubating the startups. Now this will involve essentially contribution coming from industry, and industry is very keen, right? ICT professors, students representatives, all these forms are ICT Innovation Council, and they are the one which have come out with the ICT startup policy, and this startup policy will be implemented through Innovation and Incubation Center. So this approach is inclusive. We have floated idea competition, identifying potential students, mobilization of participants, motivation to the students, mentoring support, hand-holding, innovation and IPR training, industry-defined problems, innovation competitions, innovator meets, IP clinics, innovation exhibition. These are some of the initiatives which are taken and conducted by ICT Innovation Council. These are some of the recognitions which we have received in various forums in terms of ICT's innovation, and ICT students have also been recognized as innovation ambassadors, the student innovation ambassadors. Some of the photographs here, University Challenge, IIGP challenge, which was supported by Infosys Foundation, participation in hackathons. So you have a body which is dedicated to nurturing innovation. That is ICT Innovation Council, which is led by Professor Padma Devarajan. Constantly organize events to keep innovation and entrepreneur juices flowing, facilitate intense interaction between students and research faculty, support student and training and resource for building prototypes. Represented, I'll give you some examples in due course, maybe in next 2-3 minutes or so. Involve representatives of all the stakeholders in major decision making, involve top minds in business, which are mostly our alumni, and entrepreneurship in deciding policy, and keep all policies as clear and as unambiguous as possible. Right? These are the best practices. So we do not distinguish between lady teachers or lady faculty and lady students and gender, the other gender, the male faculties, male teachers, male students, male support staff. There is equal opportunity for everyone. As you can see, the kind of distribution which we have. 32% in UG, 46% in masters, 38% in PhD, right? Special PhD fellowship for girls. We have got our alumni who funds these. Special efforts are taken to identify candidates for admission under UGC Single Girl Child Fellowships, leadership roles for girl students, general secretary, cultural secretary, sports secretary. Everywhere we have a girl representative or female representation. Here you see girls running the entire mess, and these are all the mess workers working with them. We also, as I said, have a creche to look after our young faculty and their children. We have a large number of faculty under UGC faculty recharge program. We have women's cell as per AICTE norms, proactive support, creche, and ICT campus. We have special annual best mother award for the PhD student and support staff. That a PhD student whose mother and a support staff who's also a mother. We have an award instituted for that. These are some of our role models from the female gender in terms of what they have been able to achieve and how they have motivated the ICT girls. Professor Smita Lele, Professor Padma Devarajan, Professor Rekha Singhal, Professor Lakshmi Kantam, who after retirement from the director of IICT Hyderabad came and joined as a Dr. BP Godrej Distinguished Professor. These are some of our lady entrepreneurs who contribute equally. Dr. Deepa Bazekar, Maruk, Susan Joshi, Pratibha Pilgaonkar, and Kailash Thakkar. The challenges, the governance of ICT has a tradition of inclusiveness. Hence, there are limited challenges with respect to gender equity. We have never distinguished at all, right? For everywhere, if I have anything to discuss, I don't hesitate in discussing it with either Professor Padma Devarajan or Professor Sunil Bhagwat. They are equal to me. They are my colleagues and they contribute equally, if not more than what I am able to contribute myself. The only major challenge that we are currently facing is space and funding for additional women's hostel. But hopefully we will be, if we get RUSA funding, we will be able to handle that as well. The last part, 5 minutes, what I'm going to run through. So essentially, I have already described what is existing in ICT. So what Professor Gaikar's contribution in preparing this part of the presentation is how it is unique in some way. And I'm going to just go through these particular slides quickly. It strategically strives as a world-class resource center in education, research, and innovation. And I'll give you some of the examples how TechWhip 2, TechWhip 3 has allowed us to really bring out this spirit of innovation in a collaborative mode. Right? ICT networks with others to build symbiotic relationship. This is what I'm going to talk about. ICT disseminate knowledge without any boundaries. It acts as a bridge between industry and society, and it always promotes excellence. Yeah, I think it took time to establish that. Yeah, I think, okay. Yeah. So human resource development, this is ICT, staff, admin, finance, academic, technical, laboratory, faculty, new faculty, postdoc, skill, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And right? Right. We have all these centers of excellences. Now, the excellences doesn't mean there are a large number of people in every center. It may involve one key person, and he is the one who. And that is why it is important, I said, that every faculty himself or herself is a center of excellence. So he builds that center of excellence around him, depending upon his skill set, be it IPR management, be it mathematical sciences, incubation, risk and hazard management, herbal technology and natural products. There is at least one faculty who is internationally recognized in each of these activities which have been listed on this transparency. Faculty, staff, alumni, industry, I've already discussed about this, and their essential attributes which can be considered most important for this growth and excellence and uniqueness associated with ICT. Innovation, research, collaboration, entrepreneurship are the drivers for faculty, for staff, skill improvement and commitment, alumni support, partnership, collaboration, infrastructure, students excelling, commitment, entrepreneurship, and innovation. So this is what we did in the case of Innovation Network of TechWhip Institutes. Now we did not have an opportunity, but in TechWhip 2, we did this particular exercise. Institute of Chemical Technology, VJTI, BATU, SGS Nanded, and Sardar Patel College, Mumbai. These 5 institutes came together and decided that they must come out with some products, not product, number of products. So what they did, continuous discussion between faculty members, students of all partner institutes, e-groups were formed, frequent visits to the respective institutes, design stage details, plans uploaded on common e-group, project were planned, requirements along the timelines, bar charts were prepared, mechanical, electrical designs were prepared because we do not have any expertise, but VJTI, Sardar Patel and SGGS Nanded had that expertise. Bill of material for each project was prepared. Micromanagement of purchase and inventory because TechWhip keeps a hawk's eye on the purchases, as you all know, and delivered to the institutes this procured material, building the components, and organization of prototype, delivery of products. We developed 14 such products, and these 14 products were displayed. There are videos, there are photographs. If anybody is interested which these 14 products are, I think Professor Gaikar, myself, or Professor Padma Devarajan will be more than happy to share with you. So what was the result? We were able to build confidence in the young generation that if they decide to work together as a team, because every project cannot be conducted on its own. Every project requires multiple inputs, and a single person may not be in a position to give those inputs. Not everybody is a Tony or what is called as, who's that flying?
Steve Jobs.
Huh?
Steve Jobs?
No, not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was still, you see the movie, you know, this is Iron Man, right? The Iron Man. He has all the capabilities. Not everybody can be Iron Man. So you do require commitment from others. And once you have that commitment and you form a team, you can move mountains. And that's exactly what ICT has been doing, moving mountains. So what makes ICT different? Symbiotic relationship with chemical industry. We have sponsored projects, faculty endowments. I've already elaborated that. And that's why I thought that this part essentially sums up what we have been discussing all along. And we pass those benefits to the society. I've already mentioned about many of these initiatives which are resulted into socially relevant activities. Right, I think I'm going to stop here, if I'm not mistaken. So teaching learning methods, online learning has already started. Something is happening with my... I think all these things have already been mentioned. So social learning, collaborative, only a handful of other learners are instructors, I think. These are some of the key learnings which we have. Information is easily available. Teachers help in unlearning or online misinformation, which is equally important. Information has to be processed and applied to become knowledge. This is what I already mentioned. We all have academic activities, service online, recording of regular lectures, which I have already also mentioned. I think this is where I would like to stop. And if you have any questions, queries, I'll be more than happy to answer those. Thank you for your patient listening. And sorry, I've exceeded by about 10 minutes than the allotted 1 hour. Thank you.